Today, we're talking about the biggest asshole in the Halo universe. And yes, that's including Captain Del Rio, the Didact, and the Hierarchs of the Covenant. It's a long one, there's a lot to say, so strap in. I'm talking about the Master Builder himself, Faber of Will and Might. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Forerunner lore, or who hate the direction that 343 Industries took with this story, the ancient Forerunners were the leading species in the galaxy before the firing of the Halo arrays 100,000 years ago. They were broken up into larger rates, such as warrior servants, builders, miners, haruspice, and life workers. So why is Faber such a butt munch, you might ask? Well, after learning some more about the Didact's past from reading Halo Epitaph, I started hating him even more. For over 10,000 years he lived, and during that time rose quickly through the political ranks as a builder, eventually becoming the highest figure in all of the builder rate. As he rose to power, he was ruthless when it came to neutralizing his opponents to get what he wanted, which was dominance in the Forerunner ecumene for his fellow builders. By the end of the war, it was Builder Security forces that controlled the Halos, and Builder Security who overtook the Didact's warrior servants as the Forerunner protectors. His rivalry with the Didact culminated with their disagreement about how best to combat the Flood. The Didact wanted to create a series of shield worlds like Requiem from Halo 4, while Faber wanted to create the Halo Rings. Faber eventually won and forced the Didact into exile. He was eventually released by a young Forerunner and the human that would eventually become 343 Guilty Spark. While the Didact was in exile, Faber was tasked with going to the recently defeated human homeworld to test fire a Halo. Doing this accidentally unlocked the prison that the Primordial was trapped in, and though he could not foresee it, caused the eventual downfall of the entire Forerunner Empire. Once it was released, it convinced Faber to continue its experiments on humans. He instructed the strongest of their artificial intelligences, called Mendicant Bias, to interrogate the Primordial and to continue its research on the Flood. Soon afterwards, the Primordial, the last surviving precursor, disappeared with Mendicant Bias. The Forerunner AI would soon turn rampant, suffering from something called the Logic Plague, and join sides with the Flood. For 43 years, he had lost the Primordial, Mendicant Bias, and Zeta Halo. By this point, the Didact had traveled to the homeworld of the Prophets, only for Faber to meet with them and quell an uprising by the Sanshium and wiping them all out on their own homeworld. Because of his actions, Mendicant Bias eventually moved the Halo Ring to the Forerunner capital and wiped out the entire council and several other leaders, save for a select few who had the opportunity to hide. Shortly thereafter, he arrested the Didact, the Iso-Didact, and their companions. He traveled to a flood-infested star system and left them in a derelict ship, a fate that is actually, in my opinion, way worse than death. And because Faber chose to leave the Didact defenseless, he eventually spoke with the Gravemind itself and sent him into near madness. This event led the Didact to make decisions that had consequences that we could feel even through 100,000 years of time. As Faber was now disgraced for violating the mantle of responsibility by nuking the Sanshium homeworld, he had turned to a remote part of space with other Builder Security forces and fought the Flood there. During this time, he would capture Flood-infected ships, poorly sterilize them, and then have the audacity to sell them back to Forerunners at an absurd price. And oftentimes they didn't sterilize them good enough, so the Flood was not completely eradicated, leaving the ships to be taken over again. He eventually found the Didact adrift in space, purposely sent that direction to Faber by the Gravemind. From there, he moved to the Greater Arc with the remaining Forerunners. He sacrificed himself eventually at the end to fire a Halo ray at the Flood and waited for death as his penance for his crimes. So let's sum all this up. He purposely disbanded and absorbed smaller rates that were a threat to the Builders. He used cutthroat politics to get his way and make himself richer. He let loose the most dangerous being in the entire galaxy, lost a Halo, lost the Forerunner's most valuable ancilla, forced the Didact into exile, exiled the Didact again to none other than the Gravemind, and then forced the Forerunners to use the Halo array. What an asshole. Thanks for watching, everyone. Consider dropping me a follow. I try to get a few videos out each week. Or you can join my Discord. We have dedicated Halo fans making Forge campaigns, other Halo content, or if you're just looking for a fire team to play with. Catch you next time, Spartans.